In 2009, Avatar marked the return of James Cameron to science fiction and went on to obliterate box office records. Today we'll not only discuss the quality of the film itself and expectations of the long-awaited sequel, but also Avatar's place in pop culture. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and we talk about a movie. It's really quite that simple. And on this episode, because the new one is coming out in just under, the time of recording it's a couple of weeks, probably just over a week by the time you get this, and that is Avatar. Avatar Way of the Water is on the horizon. So we are finally doing the first Avatar, a film which I saw probably like 5 times in its first year of release, most of them at the theatre, but I haven't really seen it since, so this is kind of a weird, it made me feel old, I guess is what I'm saying, because I had that kind of weird feeling of like, I watched this a long time ago, and I haven't in a long time, so I had that same feeling that I do when I watch like a movie that I watched a lot as a kid, and I'm like, I shouldn't be able to feel about something like this that came out in 2009. What age am I? This is insane. But obviously you saw this too.
I did. I only saw it once before.
Only once? Oh.
Yeah, it came out when I was still in Japan in the Navy. And so like I had to go to Tokyo to see it in IMAX and stuff. And I actually when I did see it, because the movie is in English but is subtitled in Japanese, which, it's fine for me. I can watch movies that way. But when the Na'vi speak, I don't get English subtitles for that. So this is the first time I've technically watched it and been able to know what the Na'vi are saying. I mean, I got it through context. But yeah, I saw it in IMAX in a Japanese movie theater when it came out. That's the only time I've seen it.
What a very specific experience. But yes, so we will start spoiler free, just in case anyone doesn't know Avatar and wants to get the spoiler free impressions. And then we'll warn you before we go into spoilers and talk about everything that happens in the movie. But obviously this was a big deal for me when it was coming out, because I grew up a fan of James Cameron movies, and it's kind of weird that just because of the weird gaps that he's taken in making movies between the last couple, he came out with Titanic when I was 8 years old. But Titanic, even though it's a well enough made movie, it's definitely very different to most of his films, right? So is True Lies, to be fair. True Lies is this like fun, light-hearted action romp, which is, the rest of his films, which are mostly science fiction, have a bit more weight to them than True Lies. But True Lies is a fun film. And then Titanic's obviously this like historical romantic epic on the boat, right? And it's so weird that when this came out in 2009, I had been waiting basically my whole life for a new science fiction James Cameron movie. So there was a lot of like weight in this for me, like building up to it. Like I was really excited, nervous. It was like finally a new Cameron movie. It's really the first movie that he's made in this genre, really in my lifetime. I was 2 when Terminator 2 came out, so I mean that basically doesn't count. I was a baby. So this was a big deal. I mean, I don't know, like how excited were you at the time? Was it a big deal that Cameron was making a film again? If you were even paying attention to directors and stuff at that age? I don't know if you were.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've always been a movie buff. Probably, I don't know if you can count like really, really young. So I'd say probably since Jurassic Park, I've been a movie fan and director fan. And so I definitely was excited to see Avatar and a new James Cameron movie. But I had just so much going on in my life. The late 2000s, I really didn't get to go to the movies a lot. I really tried to make the effort for a lot of cases. And I knew for Avatar that I wanted to see it specifically in IMAX, which is why I only saw it once, because it was not an easy thing to get to. I had to go take a train for an hour and like see it in order to see it at the IMAX screen, and but that's the only way I saw it. So I was definitely excited for a new Cameron movie.
I think what blows my mind now is it's actually been a longer gap between Avatar 1 and 2 than it was between Titanic and Avatar. And part of it just is getting older, that time goes by quicker. It doesn't feel like a bigger gap. It feels, even though it's been a while, yeah, like everyone jokes that it's taken ages for, because especially since they announced.
Part of it's not entirely his fault anyway. I mean, the pandemic definitely pushed things.
Oh, sure, but they'd already announced a release date and pushed it like 8 times by the time the pandemic happened. So it's not like it was rushing out.
Supposed to come out with the same time as the new Star Wars movies?
No, you're conflating different news stories. There was a story that we're going to alternate between Avatar sequels and Star Wars movies, but that's when they were planning like the Rian Johnson trilogy and like the other trilogy from the Game of Thrones guys. So it wasn't the new Star Wars we actually got.
I thought I remember that Avatar was supposed to come out like during the Star Wars trilogy that was already happening. I mean, the last one only came out last year. Or was it 2 years ago?
That was 2019. That was 3 years ago.
It was 3 years ago?
Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, 3 years. It was 2019.
What does time mean anymore?
I mean, technically you're right in that, yes, at some point it was scheduled somewhere in that 6-year period because it had to have been, but I don't think it was ever, because you know, at the time Disney didn't own Fox. That's a more recent-ish development. So there was no ties between them, other than they might have theoretically competed one year if it was going to hold its date, but it kept getting pushed, so it's irrelevant. Like, the movie kept getting pushed, and it made it feel kind of comical that it kept moving its release date, and it's like, how long is it going to take? Now, in interviews in the last couple of years, it's become clear that part of the reason why it kept getting pushed is because Cameron was determined to develop new technologies to actually... He wanted to do motion capture underwater, which wasn't possible, and they developed like how to do it over the course of making these sequels, which, you know, they've shot 2 and 3 together. I think they've even shot a little bit of 4 as well. Obviously, they've not done the effects for that yet, and they've obviously not finished the effects for 3 either. I'm sure that's still in post-production, but and that was kind of true of the first one. Part of the reason why Avatar took so long is because all the cameras that record in the 3D format that goes into the system that's used now for 3D, like, they were developing that tech along with Avatar. A few other movies got out first because, you know, there were smaller movies that were able to like make their movie like so quick, like Final Destination 4 and I think like one other movie basically were able to rush through compared to like how long Avatar was getting made, that even though they were using technology that was being produced while Avatar was being made, they were able to finish their movie and get out first in like 2009 before Avatar did. So it's a really interesting kind of like race because of these technologies, and Cameron is just like, no, we're doing something new and I'm not making it until we can do the new thing. So it's like, we're going to sit and develop the technologies to pull it off. But the flip side of that is that he's basically written like 4 Avatar sequels, and he just said this past week, oh, I've got ideas for a 6 and 7 should the world want them. And I'm like, well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. You mad bastard.
I think he's always been open. Like, this is supposed to be his Star Wars, right? Like, he wanted to build this big world and this universe outside of Earth and have it be his big, magnum opus epic.
It's interesting for a number of reasons, and I think it's one of the conversations we're about to have, I think, and probably right now, given that we're talking about these potential sequels and the big saga that he's perhaps going to have built, and he's been allowed to at least entertain the notion of, because Avatar broke all sorts of silly box office records when no one really saw it coming. No one, including me at the time, like, I did not think it was going to do... I thought it would do well. I didn't think it was going to beat Titanic, because nothing came close to Titanic. That was the joke at the time, is that no one had come close to touching Titanic's number. And then not only did Cameron come back and beat his record, he smashed it by almost a full billion. Like, that was the insane thing about how well Avatar did at the time. So
yeah, it has to be because of the worldwide success of Avatar as well. I mean, I imagine Titanic was very much this huge epic about a bunch of white people, but I think, the appeal of an alien world is more interesting for, overseas audience. Plus just the spectacle of it,
I mean, both numbers are worldwide. Like, we're talking about the worldwide record regardless. But yeah, Avatar...
Well, yeah, of course. I'm just saying, like, I bet it's because it just appeals to more people to go see it, and more frequently, like see it more than once even.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. Titanic had repeat business. That was like the weird thing about Titanic, is that people kept going back and seeing it every weekend.
I remember being in middle school and all the girls going back and seeing it at the theater.
Yeah.
And these are people who didn't go back and see it the same movie.
Yeah, so repeat business was a big part of both of those movies. Like they definitely hit different things. Titanic was this romantic film, so because it kind of lasted for like 2 months until Valentine's, it got this extra bump again because it was romantic season. Avatar was this thing where it was the novelty big 3D movie that was kind of there to show off the tech, but it was also this big film over Christmas and all these other reasons. But ultimately, it was this huge like success that no one really predicted, and it's almost to the point where there's this weird pressure on the second one to like do something big. And I don't think it's going to do what the first one did. I think it's impossible. But then I thought the first film's success was impossible. So, well,
I don't think so either. I mean, I would say, like, as a Avatar defender, as we'll get into, I think that, you know, people kind of malign the first movie, even though everybody went and saw it, and most people, it seems like they saw it multiple times. But like since that movie came out, like it goes from like a high ranking film for most people, and it's just gone down. And I don't know why. And it could just be bitterness over how long it's taken for us to get a sequel and to care about the characters again. And I don't know. I don't think so.
I disagree.
I don't, because of that though. Like I hear people all the time saying like they're not interested in the new movie.
I think I disagree with something you just said there. I don't think it went down over time. I think there was people who were adamant against Avatar the second it came out. Like, I remember the online reception to it back in 2009, and ever since it came out, there has been a constant discussion of how it's the biggest movie of all time financially. Technically, Endgame kind of beat it, and eventually, but like, you know, whatever. That's irrelevant now. It took almost. How many years did it take for something to even beat Titanic and become number 2? It took a while, right? It was one of the big superhero movies that it was probably Avengers, or one of them anyway. But the one of the ongoing discussions, because Avatar is this big movie of all time, is how little it's actually in the pop culture zeitgeist versus other big things. And I think that's a fair, interesting conversation to have. Is I don't think the like Pandora and the Na'vi and the things that are in Avatar are anywhere like in the pop culture in the same way that anything that's made half as much money is. And it's kind of weird. It's this kind of weird anomaly that it's this huge thing that made so much money, but there is no way you can tell me that
is a good point.
Yeah. Nothing in this film you can argue, and this is not about my opinion on the film, this is just like a cultural sort of like observation. Nothing's as iconic in this as other Cameron films, never mind, you know, superhero movies right now, or, you know, like there's that old Spielberg thing where it's like his most famous character is Indiana Jones, and the reason for that, the way he puts it, is that you can do a silhouette of Indiana Jones and people know who it is, and they'll get excited because it's Indiana Jones, because all you have to see is the silhouette of the hat, you know, the guy wearing the hat, and maybe a bit of the whip, and you've got Indiana Jones. That's what animators
do, right? Like, they know they have to, every character they draw has to have a familiar silhouette in order for it for people to like get into the show, even, or get into the character. And
I'm not saying that I'm not saying I couldn't recognize a Na'vi like on one of their flying birds like in silhouette, because it would, like, what else would it be? But it's not the same as like other things. Like I think even though the last 4 Terminator movies have all been terrible, Darkfate wasn't terrible, but you know,
medium to terrible.
Yeah, like the idea of the Terminator is still more iconic and still more in pop culture than anything in Avatar, and that's a very interesting like thing to think about. And I think it's a really curious thing getting into the second one and seeing like how is it going to perform. Is this second one going to like maybe crush that threshold and maybe make some of these things more of a just more pop culture like inclusive than it has been up until now? But this is probably a conversation we'll be having at the end of this review rather than the start, before we even talk about how we feel about the first movie. But we just kind of naturally went into it because we're talking about the success of the first one and whatnot. But I think it's a really interesting thing to look at, and I think part of it maybe falls into one of the things that I think is probably the biggest criticism of the first movie, which we're definitely going to talk about in a minute, which is that its story's pretty typical. It's, you know, it's just kind of just a redo of your sort of Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas style plotline, and I think my hope going into Avatar 2, and again, why we're having this conversation before we talk about the film rather than after, I don't know, but my biggest hope for Avatar 2, which is fueled somewhat by Cameron's past, is that two of the best sequels of all time are Aliens and Terminator 2, which James Cameron made. And, you know, obviously I think, and, you know, to give my first opinion of Avatar here, I would say that yes, the Terminator and Alien are both better films than Avatar, so it's not the complete most fair comparison ever. And I don't necessarily think that both those sequels improved upon the first one. I am someone who thinks the Terminator is better than Terminator 2, especially now that I've gotten older.
I'm also one of those people, yes.
And I still love T2. That's not
but
bashing.
Like a smidge.
Yeah, I'm not bashing T2 by any means, right?
No, I like the more cyberpunk of the first one.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I do think it's interesting though that like Cameron's been on the record as saying, yeah, the first one's got a really simple story because the whole idea is that it's this really complex world that he wants to like go into and the sequels and stuff. So you make the first story be more accessible and more simple. And yeah, logically that makes some sense. So I am very fascinated into the second one to see, okay, can you take all these pieces you've set up in the first film and do like something that feels more like a special story in part 2? I'd be I'm genuinely curious. Like the visuals, we know you've got down because I don't think anyone's going to argue the first film is largely quite pretty and beautiful at times. And we're no doubt going to talk about that in a minute. And the trailer for the second one again looks like it's beautiful.
Looks gorgeous.
It's got the music. Obviously, it'll be a different composer because James Horner passed away between the first and second movie. But
love the score of the first movie.
Yeah, yeah. Even with the critiques that are kind of rightly in place, because it sounds great. The score, but he does use a lot of things that he's done before in other films, like there's comparisons to
there's definitely a familiar score at the end of it, but like when the emotion stuff hits, like it hits hard. There's
little motifs that sound exactly like, it wasn't a film that I'd seen, but someone put comparisons up to like a previous James Horner score, and there's this little flurry in the brass. It's like, oh, that's exactly it what this other things did. And then
I know exactly which part you're talking about,
and I
don't remember the movie though.
Oh, for sure. And there's also a bit near the end where things like the action's gearing up and like this metallic drum starts, and I'm like, that's Aliens. I can hear Aliens in the soundtrack right now. So, you know, which is fine.
Well, you don't know. James Cameron been like, you remember that thing in Aliens? Do something kind of like that, but, you know, make it new.
Yeah. I mean, all composers do this. All composers use their own tricks and go back to the toolbox that they've already used.
Yeah, that's how we know it's them.
But James Horner is a bit more egregious with it than others. Like, because even like when he did Titanic, that was right after he did Braveheart, and there's a lot of crossover in those two scores, and you can hear it, you know. So, it's a fair critique, I think, of the music, even though it sounds great, obviously, in the film. But, yeah. So no. So I'm fascinated to see if the sequel can take these toys in the toy box that Cameron has now made and give us the special, like, you know, basically what I'm hoping for with Way of the Water is I want Terrifier 2 to Terrifier 1. I want the expansion that makes it deeper, that makes it more meaningful, that adds extra layers to it that weren't there the first time. That's what I want.
Make it 5 hours.
I believe it's 3 hours and 20 minutes. The
new movie?
Yeah, the new one. Yeah.
I've got 2 tickets for both Friday and Sunday. Sunday, I'm seeing it in IMAX. So I'll have... But I don't want to wait till Sunday, so I'm going to see it on Friday also in like a regular small theater.
Yeah. So... No, super pumped and all that. But which is all to say, you know, this has all been... I think... So much of talk around Avatar is like, you know, external to the movie itself, which is what we've been kind of talking about, is the success and the culture around it and stuff. So finally to ask the question, especially now after having, I guess, you know, two-part this. How did you feel when you saw it originally, and how do you feel now watching it again, you know, over a decade later?
Yeah, originally I was completely blown away by the technology. I had never seen a 3D movie before. I know it was kind of a dated thing that had its time and went away. And maybe even now, you could say that about 3D movies. But watching this in the IMAX theater in 3D, like I remember the point where like ash was coming down, was raining, and just being so amazed by how realistic and good it looked in 3D, and it was so bright and colorful. Nothing felt like it was dull because of 3D, which is something I feel about a lot of films later, and just 3D technology in general. It was so vibrant and beautiful, and I left the theater thinking that was quite a ride. Like, that was an experience, and I'm so glad that I had that experience. And yeah, you're right. Almost instantly, the criticisms of, oh yeah, but it's basically this story. Like, yeah, okay, so you list like Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas, Fern Gully. Yeah, I get it. It's all a very familiar story about like colonizers versus, the natives. But this is definitely better than all of those. And and that's okay. Like, it's okay to do that. Like, we watch Twilight Zone and we get like 10 of the same storyline in different episodes. But like, one of them is definitely better than all the rest. It's not necessarily the first one. It's okay to use something that's familiar and make a new story out of it. Look how many Pinocchios we got this year, and one of them is clearly great, apparently.
You're not going to get much argument from me, although I think you're going to catch some heat for saying it's better than Pocahontas from some people.
Look, I am also a Pocahontas defender. That movie's great. And I cry every time that movie comes on. And I will defend its music. Sure, there are some things in there that are definitely indefensible, but I do like Pocahontas a lot. And but yeah, Avatar is definitely better than all of them, and I'm a defender of it because, yeah, even watching it now, I cried like 3 times watching it. I got real emotional at parts. I just love the characters. I think Sam Worthington is great. I think he's a great actor in this. He never really became a superstar, which is, it's fine. If this is just his niche, is playing Jake Sully, then I get it. I love the idea of Cameron taking a Marine, which he really likes to write Marines, Space Marines, and giving it to somebody who has the right look, has the attitude, can pull off that attitude. But there's just something about him that's underlining sweet. There's just a sweetness to him that he can't quite remove from himself.
But you gotta admit though, if Michael Biehn was younger and he could still be cast in the role,
I'm sure he would have been great. Yeah,
he'd have been perfect.
Also has that badass, but he's
that's what I mean. Yeah,
sweet.
That's
he's
what I'm saying.
He's got a sweetness to him. So I think that Sam Worthington is great as Jake Sully, and which is good because we follow him throughout the whole movie. It's his perspective, and as well as the supporting cast. I think everybody's very powerful in their performance, and I love those blue cat people. I can't help it. They're right. And Pandora, the world that they create is just incredible. And then you think it's this beautiful world full of magic, and then you see it at night and you're like, oh my God, this place is amazing. I wish it was real. Anyway, do you like the movie?
that was I'm going to come off sounding like the negative one, given how glowing a praise that was. And I like Avatar. I will defend Avatar for many reasons. I would not say Sam Worthington is great. I would say he is serviceable in the movie. I think he's fine. I don't think I think he's a bit plain. I understand why he's not become this big leading man in Hollywood. They tried it a little bit for a year or two after this came out, and it did not go anywhere. And I think the reason why is he's just a bit he's just a, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe plain is the right word. I don't know, but he's fine. It doesn't bother me, certainly. I think Cameron has a tendency to have a little bit of cheesiness in his movies. As much as I love him, and obviously I love Aliens is my favorite movie of all time. The Terminator's very close up. It's definitely in my top 10 movies of all time. So he has a lot of cred with me, and I love a lot of what he does. But he does have little cheesy elements and moments that are a little on the nose, and there's definitely some of that in this, and we'll talk about it. There's the odd little bit of dialogue from Sully, Jake Sully's his name, from Worthington's character Sully, that come off a little bit cheesy and I might even say try hard. I think Cameron isn't trying hard when it comes to that sort of stuff. It feels like he knows it's cheesy. He doesn't care. He likes it. He's going to have them say it anyway.
This is what's worked for him in movies throughout his career.
But I think there's been better actors to deliver those lines than Sam Worthington. I think Sam Worthington comes off a little bit like, he comes off as a bit of a TV actor, I guess, and maybe that's a bit of a harsh statement, but he comes off as a bit of a TV actor to me.
What was he a TV actor? Wasn't he
may have
like
been
in some sort of sword and sandal show?
That sounds plausible. I have no idea, but I like the movie a lot. I do think the spectacle is great. I think the best thing about it is its direction. One of the things that I was really thirsting for in 2009 that I think this delivered on, and I was reminded of it watching it again now, is especially the last like 20 minutes or so, is the action is so well directed and easy to follow despite everything that's going on. Cameron just knows how to handle that stuff, and it looks good. The effects look by and large still excellent. I do think that some of the stuff when it's just the CG people like walking around and talking to each other, some of that has aged a little bit, but what still sort of gets me is when I'm watching it is that even just like the ship arriving at the planet at the start is like, that stuff like fidelity wise is still just like so head and above at what CG you get in movies today. It just looks stunning. The arrival to the planet, the floating mountains, all that stuff, all of it just looks really good, and it feels really high class. And part of me, and I remember thinking in 2009, oh, he obviously Cameron's a little ahead of the curve, but what's so funny is that I feel like most big budget movies have actually regressed in the last decade. You know, Marvel movies, you know, their effects, like, they don't try very hard with the effects. They're like, you know what, we get away with just half-assing it, so they just half-ass. And I'm not saying the people animating it are half-assing it. I'm saying the people making the decisions are half-assing it, and how much time they give to the animators and how much they pay them. That's what I'm saying the half-assing is. So don't take that as a critique of the people actually crunching away until late hours of the night, making sure things are done on time. I'm not saying they're half-assing anything. I'm saying the decision making is half-assing, like the effort and time that goes into it, because they want to make deadlines and whatever other shit. Whereas Cameron clearly, F your deadline, we're pushing this for years and years until we are ready to release my magnum opus.
Don't worry, I'll make 5 more. It'll make all its money back.
So I think it looks great. I think the visuals are great. I think the music's really good. It has a pretty solid cast. There's obviously those people who are better than others. Zoe Saldana is very good. I don't think I knew who she was at the time, but Zoe Saldana, like Natiri, her mother is played by C.H. Pounder.
Pounder, yeah.
Who I know mainly from The Shield, because she's great in that show. But she's obviously popped up in a lot of things over the years. I think Stephen Lang is great. Like,
he is definitely the standout for me from the film.
He's a little cheesy at times, but he is so good at playing the cheesy, like, American military dude. Like, he's
such
so
a great,
good at that.
like, Cameron character also.
Yes.
You know, because like I said before, he loves writing about, you know, space marines, and just him holding a coffee mug while they're like flying around and doing, you know,
bombing stuff. Yeah.
And just like so casual, like, yeah, go ahead, sip on his coffee.
One of my
it's such a great little detail that just brings out so much character.
One of my favorite little details in this movie is when they all arrive in Pandora early on, and he's given them he's given all the military people that have arrived a speech. They're all the newcomers, you know, Pandora's worse than Vietnam and all that shit, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like, it's sort of thing where I think it's really obvious now that I've noticed it, but I don't know how obvious it is if you've not noticed it. But the background when he's given this speech, did you notice anything about it? No. In this room? It's like blinds that are behind him. Did you notice anything about the way the shot's framed?
I can't say that I did. Is it like Aliens when they're having their meeting before going back out there?
No. So the blinds, because of where this big, like, back of there's like a machine in the wall or something. I don't know if it's like the back of a computer screen that's up in the wall, or if it's like just some, you know, ventilation system or whatever it is. But it takes up like this sort of top corner, and it looks like he's standing in front of the American flag when he's giving this speech. It's like, it's kind of subtle because it doesn't jump out at you, but once you've noticed it, you're like, God damn, Cameron, you're really like hammering this home. Like, and what's so great about it is that this room later on, when Sully's like starting to like question his loyalty a bit, the scene where Stephen Lang, you know what, I've never learned his character's name, Quadreach, right? The scene where he comes in and first says, hey, you're not like getting lost in the trees, are you, soldier? Like, that scene happens in front of this makeshift American flag, where he comes in and he's representing the country, he's representing the man and the system. And I think what's so interesting about compare it to Aliens is because there is some natural comparisons to make just in the fact that it is space marines and stuff like that, is that in both, there is like a villainous sort of side to it, the corporation side of it that wants to make money. And I think what this movie obviously makes the colonial marines more villainous in that you've got this like, you know, very like pro-gun, like we're going to come after the savages and do this. Whereas in Aliens, inherently the marines aren't villainous because the aliens themselves are also this force that came in and killed people, so they're also alien to this world, right? Like, so they're also villains. Whereas here it's the natives, here it's, and a lot of the language used here is very intentional. They're calling them savages repeatedly. I think at one point Ribisi refers to them as blue monkeys, which really stuck out. There's a lot of just like dehumanizing and like, no, they're not living sentient beings. They are animals. They are savages that we're going to take our thing from. So there's a lot of commentary. There's a lot of like, it's very obvious. Don't get me wrong. It's not like buried deep or anything. Like it's wearing its message on its sleeve, but it is there. And there's a little bit of an environmental message as well that's kind of sprinkled.
Totally. I mean, especially you hear little bits of it about like what Earth is like current day.
Well, I watched the extended cut.
Oh, okay, because like I didn't even know there was an extended cut. I just watched the Disney Plus version, which is theatrical. It
came out a year later on like Blu-ray and stuff, so I intentionally, because you can buy it on iTunes, you've got the option of buying the regular cut or you don't get them together, annoyingly, because the Alien movies, you get both when you buy them, so you get just pick every time you watch it. But if you buy the extended cut, you get about an extra 15 or so minutes and a lot. So it's out at the start of the movie. You know, it starts with a shot of like flying over Pandora, and he's like, you know, when I was shot in the stomach, when I was, you know, in the Marines, like I started dreaming of flying, right? And then it like cuts straight to him waking up in the cryo sleep, right on the way to the planet. Extended cut? No, he wakes up on Earth, and we get like, you know, 10 minutes on Earth.
Whoa.
Introducing Sully. Some of his narration from this part of the Earth is actually still in the theatrical cut when they're like arriving, but it's more contextually in the Earth part of the movie. And we see him at a bar, and like some guy like slaps his girlfriend, and he goes over even though he's in a wheelchair. And I was getting really ready to cringe because I thought, oh god, this is going to be really awkward where he tries to like stick up for her, and the guy's going to get, you know, like ableist or just be a shithead. But instead of doing that, he doesn't even talk to him. He just pulls his stool away so the guy falls down, and he throws himself on top of him and starts punching the shit out of him. And it just kind of sets up like who he is as a character. And you see him like going down the street. So you actually get a shot of like an Earth street and like all the people and the neon lights and stuff. So you actually get to see a little bit of future Earth. It's a little Blade Runner-y and stuff. It was really interesting. There's a couple other things from later as well. Cool. But I also laugh because he lives in what looks like a closet, right, in terms of width, but he's got like an 80-inch screen with the news on it. And I'm like, can he even see all this screen from side to side because he's so close to it? He's like too close to this screen. It's too big.
Yeah. What movie was that? Oh, that was like Fahrenheit 451 or something, where they're like, we need to get a fourth TV, which means like the whole wall is a TV. So.
Yeah. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'd love a TV that size, but if I'm sitting like 2 foot away from it, it won't fit in my vision. Like I can't see it all.
You gotta get immersed in the news.
There is like one snippet of it that is in the theatrical cut, but it came later when he's like talking in the narration about his brother dying. You get like a quick snippet of him looking at the body. In the extended cut, you actually see the context of like the guys coming in, like, you know, getting him and like taking him to his brother's body, so you get a bit more of that. It's interesting. It's an interesting little extra segment, and there's a few other things later on which I'll talk about in spoilers, but like that was the big thing at most.
Do you feel like the extended edition has improved the film for you?
I think it's
one of those things where like I'm a fan, so I'm just going to enjoy this version of it, but like the theatrical one is what I became a fan of.
I think it's a better introduction, and I think seeing Earth a little bit and it just looking like a dark Blade Runner style world helps the, you know, later on when he says something like, you know, Earth doesn't have any green anymore, because you see a little bit of like this, you know, metropolis side of it at the start, I think it maybe helps. And I think, but what I would say is more important is that it helps. I think it's a better introduction to Sully as a character, because I think in the theatrical cut, it's all in narration, it's all telling us things. Whereas in this extended cut, and obviously they were trying, because it's so long, they were trying to obviously cut out 15 minutes just to like make it shorter. I think in this extended cut though, it shows you his character a bit better, so that it's not just him telling us. So I think it's a stronger start from just the way it tells the story perspective. And And honestly, when you're already at 2 hours 40 something minutes, going to 2 hours 55 is not really that big of a deal. It's like, you know.
No, I agree. I thought it was going to be much more than that. I mean, usually extended editions were just like, they don't really have a whole lot of extra scenes. It's just scenes are kind of longer.
I think there's probably a few of those, but I just didn't notice them as much because it's harder to like notice there's something new when it's like that, and I've not seen it in a while. There is like a sort of running thread that's introduced later that is sort of like, so there's like 2 or 3 scenes that are put in that sort of make up the thread. Kind of similar in how in Aliens, how they took out that Ripley had a daughter in the shorter cut. And but so you get the introduction to it, but you also get a couple of scenes later that reference back to it. There's kind of something like that in this as well, which I'll talk about.
That sounds cool. I'd like to watch that.
Yeah.
Just to see, like, because I thought that stuff where you just get little snippets of, you know, the world building for Earth was very interesting. And you don't, like you said, that one line doesn't come in till much later. So you're like, oh wow, there's no green left on Earth. Interesting. I when watching it this time, I actually was surprised at how quickly the movie just gets into it, you know. So it's interesting to hear that that's not the case with the original, or not original, with the extended version.
But Joe, I also think it helps with, I think, see when like you get cut to the, because basically as soon as he wakes up, you get to that exterior shot of the ship arriving at Pandora, and he's like, oh, this is Pandora, you know, I've heard about it, but I never dreamed I'd be coming here. And you get this great shot of this ship spinning as it's going towards Pandora, which is surrounded by like this large gas giant and like these other like smaller planets or moons. I think in the theater, even though it's only like 10 minutes, I think the fact that in the extended cut, he's on Earth and you see him living this miserable life where he's in this tiny like closet of an apartment and he's struggling, and you know, because when he has this fight in the bar, he gets thrown out into the alleyway, and when the 2 like bouncers like throw his chair out after him, it lands on his back, it bounces off of his back, and like he never seems like beat up by it, in the sense that he cracks like a line to be like, you know, like, you're losing a customer. So he sort of he has a bit more personality, but you see this shitty world that he's living in. So I think when they're arriving at Pandora, I almost feel like it feels like a bigger deal, like, oh, we've just seen what he's left, so now this feels, I think in the theatrical cut, because it goes straight to that, it's like, oh, we're just already at Pandora. It feels like a bigger deal that they're going to Pandora, and just because we've been on Earth for 5 minutes, you know, it's a small thing.
Well, that's true. I mean, even you saying like, you know, he basically lives in a closet with the TV in it.
Yeah.
Is very interesting because, you know, when he gets to Pandora and, you know, events happen, he's got this whole world that he can really race through, and it's so that probably does mean a lot more to him, and not just about the whole paraplegic thing. Yeah,
and obviously that's a big part. And I think because I was thinking about this a bit more as I was watching it this time, is that part of the reason why he is attracted to this other culture, it's not just because he gets the hots from the TV, although, you know, that's part of it, obviously. I think this whole idea that the reason why he's attracted to this other world's values and this other civilization's values is because his civilization failed him, right? There's a line early on, it's in the theatrical cut, although it plays at a different moment, where he says, oh, they could fix my legs, but not on vet benefits, not in this economy, right? So this idea that our system
is have the money,
is failing him. And even just the fact that he was injured in the first place, the fact that he was a Marine in the first place was our system, right? You know, our system put him in a situation where whether he signed up because he needed the money or because he believed in fighting or whatever, the system put him in that position. He got injured because of that, and now that he's hurt, like, yeah, technically he could get fixed, but again, the system is holding him back. The system is so it's not just the fact that Giovanni Ribisi represents the corporation going to get the unobtainium, which, by the way, he should have named it something different. No, he should have named it something different. It's too goofy. It's too silly.
No, I love it.
Everyone makes fun of it for all the right reasons. They should have picked just something that sounded different, but whatever.
He likes his cheese.
But it's not just that they're going to like steal a resource, which obviously, you know, ties into oil and going to other countries for that. You know, there's a lot of obvious things it's paralleling. But even just the idea that the economy and the system is failing the people on an individual basis back home, like Sully, and that he can't get this help.
Like the wounded vets, which is something that, like, even Americans who are like, people shouldn't have free healthcare for some reason, are like, no, wounded vets should be taken care of.
So there's a lot of commentary in this, and it's, you know, it's the obvious stuff, but I think some of it, and I think that comes out a bit more in the extended cut, because you see these scenes on Earth and you see how he's living, and you get the difference. Because I think in the theatrical cut, because you don't really get much of an introduction to him other than a bit of narration, it kind of just does come across as, and this works, don't get me wrong, but it's like, oh, he can't walk, we see his skinny legs, and then when he first wakes up in the Avatar body, he's like, oh shit, I can walk, I can run, and it's this magical moment for him as you can see the dirt kicking up as he's running in the ground. But I think the extra context where it's like, oh, it's more than that, you sort of see, because I think going back to Aliens and talking about how the actual colonial marines themselves are sympathetic, and we sort of still see them as people. Yeah, they've got a bit of machismo and they're kind of acting tough, but when shit hits the fan, we see the real humans come out, and like especially some of the characters that we connect to more. But Paul Reiser's character represents the corporate, like cold, like bastard side. Here, this film has a bit more layers to it in the sense that we get the devout marine who believes in the system, who sticks up for it, and at one point I think Lang even calls the scientists limp dick tree huggers, right? Like he says that at one point, because it's all about machismo, it's all about going to war, it's about taking what we deem as ours. We'll pretend that we're trying to do it nice. I mean, there's a line in the movie where he's trying to argue that he's going to like do this attack, and he's like, well, use gas, it'll be humane, more or less, like that. It's like he just wants to do this. He just he wants to show the force. He this is what he represents, and so yeah, and like I think getting Stephen Lang was just such a genius.
Genius maneuver, because like he's so good in this role. He's great. This kind of tropey character, honestly, but like who cares, because like he's so good at it, he's so perfect, and he's a badass marine who everybody gets behind because he is the values of the military, he's also the kind of people who represent the military normally, like even in movies, he looks the part so much as well. He is built in the movie. Yeah. I'm sure he's a lovely man, but like he looks, he's got that short gray hair, but he looks really tough, and the way he can just sort of like just like he probably has some of the most memorable lines in this movie just because of the way he delivers them, where I always like, even though I hadn't seen it in 10 years, like if you said quote me something from Avatar, the first line that comes out of my head is like, that's taking the initiative, son, I wish I had 10 more like you. Like I always remember him saying that. He's got all these little lines, and it's just the way he delivers them. And he's kind of a badass, but he's a badass for all the wrong reasons, which makes him easy to hate and easy to like root for the other characters to beat. But you could see how like somebody coming from the Earth that you've described, who lives in this tiny little place and it has is surrounded by technology and like incredible achievements, but it feels so insignificant in it, would be drawn to somebody who is so oorah marine, and like calling him son and making him feel like he's part of the club and manipulating him to do what he wants for his own gain, which is to do more war. Like he's just a man obsessed with war because he's great at it.
Yeah, and obviously we'll talk about this more later when we're in full spoilers and all that, but he is apparently coming back for the sequels, so we'll see how that happens.
I think I saw like Sigourney Weaver was also credited in it, but
she's played a different character though.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't said spoilers yet, so I don't know. I feel like we've already kind of spoiled some things, but like, is she like? I was thinking about, because what happens to her fate? Maybe she's still somehow tied to the world, and she can make an appearance that way. But I don't know.
Sure. No, I think she just played a different character, but it's obviously an AV, so it's like you get away with it a bit because it's like, they can change your face and
Oh, okay.
So. Look, she just likes working with Cameron, all right? Like his other bestie, Kate Winslet's in the new one. Like she's showing up.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, she's in the second one.
I guess I haven't even really looked at the cast.
Actually, I completely forgot there was a Kate Winslet song at the end of this, because when it started playing in the credits, I was like, that's right, you got Kate Winslet. Oh, not Kate Winslet, sorry, Celine Dion. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's right.
You got Celine Dion back to do a song. No one brings this song up though. No one remembers it.
No. It was probably still nominated for an Oscar.
Although, much like My Heart Will Go On, though, it is set to it's based on the score for the movie. Like, you hear parts of the score in the backing track, so it's based on the movie music.
because James
Interesting.
Cameron's one of my people. He's a Canadian, and he knows Canadian royalty, like Celine Dion.
Aye, sure. So just funny actually. So Sam Worthington, I think, is Australian, and for the most part, he doesn't really show it in his accent. But
I definitely hear it from now.
Well, what I was going to say is there's one line where it really sticks out. There's one line that he shouts in this movie where his Australian just comes screaming out, and I guess it's because it's hard to shout and fake an accent at the same time.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. That is interesting because I've always felt like, people when they speak in their native accents, sometimes I can have trouble, but if they sing in English, I can understand them better. Yeah, I think a great example is probably just like John Lennon. When he talks, it's like you have to pay attention because that Liverpool accent is so thick, but when he sings, like I hear it is fine. So like you would think shouting would be kind of like that.
I want some chicken and a can of coke. That's our accent.
Isn't that your Irish accent or something?
No, it's not Irish.
That's Liverpool?
I'm not good at it. Liverpool. So I can't do accents. Like, leave it for me. Not my forte. Not my forte at all. So yeah. All right. Let's just spoiler warning then, so we can talk about everything in
how long have we been talking?
Like 45 minutes. What are you doing? What are you complaining about? Come on.
No, we don't usually go this long on the non-spoiler section.
Well, we had 20 minutes before we even started talking about the movie because there was so much other stuff to talk around it.
Hey, it's a big deal. It's a James Cameron movie.
Don't do that.
James Cameron. Wait, you don't like South Park?
I have no. Nah, I don't really care.
Did you know that was from South Park?
No, I didn't. I hate it even more now that I know it's from South Park, though.
South Park's amazing. Screw you.
Not for me, thank you very much. So I mean, I guess we'll set up the rest of the characters. So obviously we got Jake, who's our main character, who is brought into this program, the Avatar program, because his twin brother, much more successful by the sounds of it, is a multiple PhD scientist who was studying for this, and part of the whole program is that they have to build this Navi body that you're going to inhabit out of your DNA and some Navi DNA, and you take control of it. That's why it's called Avatar, right? But his brother just is randomly killed. He's stabbed in a mugging, and because they're twins, he can connect with his brother's avatar. So that because this thing costs so much to make, the military and government are like, hey, we spent 10 million on this thing. I mean, in this year, maybe that's nothing. Maybe it's more like 10 billion. Whatever the exchange rate is like now. But you can do this. So he's kind of roped into this, and just kind of goes with it, probably because he needs the money. The movie doesn't dwell on it too much. Obviously, once he actually does it, and he realizes, oh shit, I can walk with these legs. It is interesting though. I do think it's quite fascinating that Stephen Lang also promises him that I'll get your legs fixed. Like if you spy on the Navi for me and report back to me, I'll be a man of my word. I'll make sure you get your real legs back. And it does kind of feel like,
he's got both worlds that are gonna give him the thing that he wants.
Yeah.
To walk again. Yeah.
I kind of though the way Stephen Lang says it though does come off as just a bit in the racist side. In context of the world, not in a real world way, but like your real legs, not those stupid blue legs. You'll have your real human legs.
Well, part of it's also, I mean, the Navi refer to them as dreamwalkers, and the way we see them go into the avatars, into their avatar, then it is very much like they go to sleep, and then their conscience is in another body having this other experience, much like a lucid dream would be. I
mean, it's not even it just is. That's flat out how it works. They go to sleep and their consciousness travels over to the avatar body, and that's actually used as a mechanic as the film goes on, where maybe the human body's in trouble because someone's coming after it, so it's there's a push and pull there.
Does it mean that when he gets back into his body that he's well rested? Or does he have to sleep still?
I think he still has to sleep because that comes up in the movie a couple times.
He definitely has to eat. Yeah, he does fall asleep, so he must be wore out.
Yeah. There's more eating stuff in the movie actually as well. That's one of the things that's added. There's more stuff where Sigourney Weaver's forcing him to eat because he's not eating. He's like that. You know, you ate in your other body. Like you need to take care of this one. There's like a more emphasis on that in the extended cut.
That would be interesting. That would mean he'd have to eat like twice. He have to always be eating, right? Because when he has to eat as his human body, but then his avatar Navi version has to eat also, so he has to eat twice.
That sounds
twice
fine.
the amount of food.
You'd love to do that. What are you talking about?
Did you just call me fat?
No. I'd love to do that. I'm not accusing you of it, and that I don't also agree with.
Yes, of course I would love to do that.
Most people would love to eat twice the amount of food with no consequence.
Because Navis are much bigger and they're way more active, so they probably have to eat a lot more.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fruit.
So that's very much his deal. So there's a lot of stuff where he's like this, military grunt. So the scientists, Sigourney Weaver's not happy that he's there first because, oh god, he's not learned the language. He's not learned how to like operate the body or anything. Like he's a complete noob. And part of that clash, it's almost like I think an intentional thing on Cameron's part in writing the script is that he wants Jake to clash with the scientist. It's kind of almost like a small version of then what the main part of the movie is like the humans clashing with the Na'vi. It's the idea that even amongst the humans, he feels like an alien to these scientists because he's a military grunt, effectively, and hell, that's even something that's brought up in Alien, is Paul Reiser says he can't make that choice, he's just a grunt, no offense. Like that's a theme that has been in Aliens already from Cameron. So
I do also really like the casting of Giovanni Ribisi in this, because he kind of reminds me of Paul Reiser wasn't really known for being a skeevy villainous kind of actor or perform in any of his roles. So it seems kind of like an odd choice to use him, but he ends up being perfect in that role. And I think Giovanni Ribisi is also kind of like, he's just a likable little guy that we get in movies all the time. And
yeah, I don't think
he's love him from, Saving Private Ryan and stuff. And
I think I've Gone in 60 Seconds first, to be honest, when I think of Giovanni Ribisi, but it's just me.
It's not a movie I've seen.
But I don't think he's as good as Paul Reiser. I don't actually think I think Paul Reiser might be a bit of a better actor, but I think there's so much more to set up in this movie that I think his character gets a little bit he's a bit too thin compared to I think Paul Reiser's character in Aliens, if I'm comparing the two.
I don't know. I found him to be kind of memorable. Maybe because I always see him as this likable little guy that we always root for.
Maybe.
Unless his character in Gone in 60 Seconds isn't like that, but
nah, not really. He's kind of the troubled little brother. He's the reason why Nicolas Cage has to steal 50 cars in one night.
Oh.
Because he's in trouble with the wrong people. So Nicolas Cage has to assemble his car stealing team, including Angelina Jolie, to steal 50 cars in one night. So it's not high art, but it's a fun movie.
I thought you only like high art films.
I like many different types of films. How dare you? I just have perspective and can be honest about what they are.
Are you trying to say something?
I'm trying to say sometimes you're a bit delusional. That's all I'm saying.
Look, I can't tell. I mean, I like what I like.
Yeah, go back and check out the Joy and the Mnemonic review for an example of Tara being delusional.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
You're just ruining your credibility every time you bring that up. Don't bring it up, because we're going to have to fight with you in the comments about Avatar as it is.
Well, people, if you disagree with me, watch the movie again before you say, because that movie's got a stigma attached to it. But sometimes movies just age well, and that's a movie that's aged well.
No, it hasn't. Tara's wrong on this particular issue. Just trust me.
Check out last week's Ace.
You got Michelle Rodriguez in a fairly small role as a pilot named Trudy, who is, she has she's this sympathetic character who ultimately decides to side with the heroes because she doesn't like what's happening to the Na'vi. I think she's fine enough in the movie. She's just very Michelle Rodriguez. I don't think she has that much of a character beyond just kind of her function. But she's, I kind of feel like her and to an extent Ribisi both probably had more in the script to really give them more depth as characters. But I think they had to kind of trim them down for time because there was so much going on. And Ribisi as well, the way he's set up is kind of his villainous corporate guy, because he's playing with the golf ball and stuff, and he comes in, it all just feels a little bit this is the quickest possible way to do this.
I think you meet Ribisi's character before you meet Stephen Lane's character, so I want to say he's more set up to be the villain of the film, but then like a very obvious real villain shows up a bit later, and so Ribisi kind of gets put to the side. I like Michelle Rodriguez in the film. I think she's like, you see her in a movie and she's almost always playing the same character, you know? Like as soon as she shows up, you're like, I know who she is.
She's typecast for sure.
Yeah. But I do like her, and I like her empathy. I think that's a good thing to have in the military. You know, the whole just following orders thing doesn't have to hold. You know, you can have an ethical stance and do something, and she's there to like represent that.
Yeah, I kind of wish
she's cool.
We got a couple more scenes with her to kind of set up that she was maybe going to make this choice, because I feel like when she does make that choice, like halfway through, or it's not just actually, like the home tree thing actually is about maybe 2/3 that push. It's like an hour and 40 into the extended cut, but when she makes this choice to like not go along with it, you know, before that point she has a couple of scenes talking to people, but there's not really much of an introduction to her that sets up that she's conflicted or yeah, you know.
I guess she does come off as like she's the military person that gets along with the scientist, though.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where I think some characters were just given and maybe they had more in the script originally. It wouldn't surprise me if the first script for Avatar was like 500 pages long or something like that. And
so I'm assuming then there's nothing extra in the extended edition.
I don't think so. I don't know. Nothing stuck out as new with her. So, yeah, because there's a moment like later on when some of our main characters have been like imprisoned for working with the Na'vi, and she's Trudy's the one that breaks them out, and she comes in and is like, "Yeah, I'm breaking you out." And part of me felt like, oh, this could feel like a bigger moment if this was a character who we weren't really sure how she sided, or like this could be like a big face turn moment where like, oh, this is a character who we weren't sure about, who's like, no, they're making this good choice now. But it's almost a disservice to it that she already turned away during the bombing of the tree. Like if she just looked conflicted during that scene, maybe like this choice here would be like the moment where she's like, okay, you know what, I feel guilt now, I want to like try and fix this. You know, you could maybe have a bit more with the character in that way. But like in the moment, it's like it's a fine little prison break type scene, but like it's like, yeah, this could be like an FEM moment that she's turning sides. And I don't think it feels like that. I think she's just too thin as a character for it to feel like a big like shift.
Yeah, I guess so, because you're right. When she shows up afterwards, it's after we've seen her. She's already sort of defected from her orders. So it's not like, is she, because when she shows up with like the food to break them out of their little containment thing, is that you know why she's there. She's there to get them out. So
yeah, it kind of robs that of any surprise or tension or anything. It's just, and if anything, it's like
go ahead.
Wouldn't everyone know she like made this weird decision in the middle of the fight to like turn away and not get involved? Like you think that everyone would be like, oh,
she would also be locked up or something.
Not necessarily locked up, but just that everyone would get like, just the way she comes in, she's like, "Hey, buddy, it's been a long time," and he's like sort of like talking casually to her. I just like, if anything, you think we're like, I heard about you're not following orders anymore. Like I don't know, like it feels like there's a lot of people there, but it feels like that story would spread, that one of the pilots kind of went off script during a mission. But
I do like the moment that she doesn't agree to shoot at the tree, though, because everybody is talking about it like it's just a tree. Like obviously it's a very big and beautiful tree and that is sacred to the native people on this planet, but like it is not. But it's always described it's just a tree. It's just a tree. You're just shooting at a tree. But she sees it as more than that. So like it's a nice moment that it's not just about like, oh, I refuse to kill somebody. It's like, I refuse to kill this living, piece of it's wrong to do this to this land, not just the people.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously the colonialism stuff is there, and like coming in and taking resources, and if they're on top of the resources, which they are in this case, we'll make up a reason to make them the enemy, so then we can feel justified in wiping them out before we then just take the thing we wanted in the first place. There's all that's kind of spelled out for you in the movie itself, but there's it's there. As far as other characters go, there's Norm, who's the other scientist, who's he's jealous at first of Sully because Sully's waltzed in, and so when Sully ends up just by kind of accident, gets involved in the theory and is taken to the home tree and all that, Like, when Norm finds this out, he's like, I've been training for this like for the last 10 years of my life, and this asshole waltzes in here and just like is handed on a platter everything he wanted. He wanted to be the important one who like broke peace with the Na'vi. He wanted to be the one who, became one of the people and all that.
Yeah, but he's a scientist, which is obviously not a bad thing to be, but I think the Na'vi have already seen the scientist as people who are not willing to change. Like, they're there for research, and obviously they respect them, but it requires more than just the logical brain to get into their customs and culture and like the why of it all.
Yeah. So there's actually, one of the things that's in the extended cut, and since we're going to bring up Natiri now, played by Zoe Saldana, who's the main Na'vi that we get to know, who is sort of the love interest for Jake, is that the extended cut has an extra element to her character. And I think the one moment that's still in the theatrical cut, I assume, but it's been all the times I've seen it, you can tell me if it's there, when they go and visit the school that they had for the Na'vi in the jungle, and it's set up that there was more peace before, and that the reason why a lot of the Na'vi can speak English is because Sigourney Weaver was teaching them in school, and that Natiri was like a younger pupil. She was like because they've been here for like a good decade or something like that. So Natiri was like a high schooler or whatever going to school with Sigourney Weaver. When they visit this like abandoned little school hut, is there bullet holes at one point that Jake looks at? He sort of notices some bullet holes.
I don't think so.
They're not there? Okay, I thought they may still be in the theatrical cut, but so they're in the extended cut, so that's just a little snippet in that scene that he notices these bullet holes. And then it's brought up, so it's an extended version of a scene that's already in the theatrical cut, when I think it's when like Sigourney Weaver's like showing him, like, so this is the clan leader, this is his name, this is the spiritual leader, this is the Natiri's mother, blah blah blah. That scene keeps going in the extended cut, where it's like Norm showing his jealousy, and he says something about, oh, you would know that if you trained or whatever, and then Sully turns and looks at him and goes, yeah, well, I've got a date with Natiri here, and
with the chief's daughter. Yeah.
And Sigourney was like, oh my god, it's like kindergarten, like both of you shut up. And so I think Norm says, oh, and Natiri's got a sister, and Sully goes, yeah, well, I'll date her too, and he's sort of still rubbing it in, and then Sigourney Weaver goes, yeah, you can't, she's dead. And it's like this like downer end to the scene, and that sets up this other element to the character, right? And I was like, okay, that was the moment where I went, oh, this definitely wasn't in the theatrical cut, because I did not know Natiri had a sister.
yeah, that's new to me.
And it's followed up later on when there's an extra scene where he's come out of one of his like trips, and this is like, when he's been going for a while with a Na'vi, and this is the scene where like Sigourney Weaver's like, no, you need to eat something, like, make sure you eat, like, you're not feeding this body properly. And there's a little bit of that in the theatrical cut later, where like he like forced like eats like some scrambled eggs or something before he goes back in, and she's like, no, you need to eat, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll shovel it in quickly. He's determined to go back in. But this one's like less funny. This is like a more sort of dour thing where he just looks depressed and he doesn't want to eat, and she's like, no, eat. And he says, okay, what happened to the school? Like, he looks at some photos of the school, and like she's with the kids, and she's like, what happened to the school? And it turns out Natiri's sister was with a group of Na'vi who actually burned a bulldozer that was like taking down some of the trees, and the military came to the school and shot the group responsible for burning the bulldozer down, including Natiri's sister, and Natiri saw it. So it sets up this this sort of more tragic backstory side to this, and it's one of those things where I think you can critique it maybe for and this was maybe the problem with the start of the theatrical cut, is that a lot of the exposition's in the narration and it's not a lot of show. While it's like telling us this backstory, I think the more interesting part of it is that it shows Jake's reaction to hearing this and like finding out, and the way he responds to it is like the important part of the scene. And because I think this is the part where he's still kind of working for the military, he's not really like sort of switched to like not doing it for them yet. And I think this is one of the first big moments in the extended cut where he's maybe like doubting that he's like doing this for the right people. And so there is like an important plot beat there for him as a character.
Yeah, because you sort of see him as like split personality almost, like when he's playing the Na'vi, like he is in that world, and he's acting like he's always going to be in that world, especially later on when he knows like his time is up, but like he's still wants to take a wife and stuff like that. Like he's just making long-term plans, you know. But and then when he gets out of that world, he's like, oh, you know, he's talking to Stephen Lang. I don't remember his name either. Colonel Stephen Lang.
Quaritch.
I think Quaritch is right. Yeah. Not a name that I'm really familiar with, so I guess I don't know any Quaritches.
The Colonel. Just call him the Colonel. That's fine.
Colonel Lang. Excuse me. Still getting over a cough.
Yeah.
Just a cough. Anyway, also that scene kind of sets up, or at least bookends what the thing is that, you know, turns the military against Jake, which is that he also attacks a bulldozer when it's taking down trees, sacred trees.
Absolutely, yeah. It ties into that. It actually makes that moment where he does that more meaningful because it ties into Natiri's past with her sister. So that's actually a really neat point that comes up from that. There's a few good setup and payoffs like that. There's a kind of nice thing where Sigourney Weaver, when they first talk about the Valley of Souls, or whatever they call it, which is the place where this religious site that the Na'vi have, and it's the place that when Sigourney Weaver's dying, they take her and her avatar and try and transfer her over to her avatar body permanently, so it'll save her, and it fails seemingly. Although she does get to like connect to like Iwa, the you know, the spiritual, like what they call the green from Swamp Thing, which is like the living memory of all the plant life and the earth, or not earth in this case. You know what I mean?
Pandora.
Did they call dirt Pandora because we call dirt Earth? That's a good question.
I don't know.
Technically, we can't call it Earth. It's like if you're on Mars, you can't call it dirt Earth. It's not. It's factually not. It's Mars.
Maybe they do, and if you're on Mars, they refer to Earth as Terran, like they do in
maybe,
sci-fi
yeah.
movies.
Yeah, true. I like that. What I like about the Terran thing, this is a slightly off-topic little point, but what I like about that is that in sci-fi stories, we always seem to call people from another planet. Like, so, you know, we call, you know, so like in, pick a sci-fi thing. So in Star Trek, for example, Vulcans come from the planet Vulcan. Not true with Klingons in Italy. They've got a completely different name, but a lot of them come from a planet that's,
for the most part.
Yeah. I like the idea of Terra and Terran being a thing because it makes us equal to them. Because, you know, we don't, I mean, yeah, you can call us Earthers, but that's not the name of our species. You know, we're human, right? So, I don't know, I kind of like that Terra and Terran puts us on the equal playing field to all the other planets in these sci-fi stories. I kind of like that. But then again, we're not calling the Na'vi Pandorans, are we? We're calling them Na'vi. So, good job, Cameron.
Although there are plenty of things that are like have a name that the humans have given them, and also a name that the Na'vi refer to them.
That's
as.
true. That's true.
Like
yeah.
even the flying dragon things are like, oh, we call them banshees, but they're called obviously on the planet they call them something else.
Oh, for sure.
I don't remember what it is, but
yeah. So yeah. The point I was getting to the Sigourney Weaver thing though is that earlier on there's a joke where when she first hears that Jake might be going there, she's like, "Oh man, I would die to get a sample." So then when she's been carried in dying, there's like a little callback to it where she's like, "Oh, I need to get a sample." But it's like it's a nice little reminder for the audience that, oh, this is that place that she cared about, and now she's here and it might save her life.
She literally had to die to go in there. Yeah.
But she does say that when the transfer was attempted, that she did in some way connect to Iwa and felt that it's real, like this connection, that this living memory that connects them all does exist. That is a scientific, you know, measurable thing. It does exist. It's not just some spirit that they're all chanting to, which is, you know, which is interesting, and it's also the reason why that Natiri doesn't kill Jake when she first sees him, because she's going to shoot him with the arrow, and then, like, you know, a little, you know, the speck of light thing, the jellyfish,
the little seed jellyfish thing that floats.
Yeah, just
a little bit like a dandelion scene.
You know, he was saying no. This guy is pure of spirit and should be kept alive, and you know, obviously that kickstart their whole thing.
So that's why I was thinking maybe that's why Sigourney Weaver's in the sequel, because her consciousness seems to go into Awa or into the world.
Do you know, I was thinking that
this green thing is.
I was thinking that as well. It was only when I looked at the IMDb for the second movie that I remembered hearing she's playing a different character. So I think that just, yeah. Now how Stephen Lang's back, I have no idea. I'm glad he is.
Maybe there's going to be like a Stephen Lang equivalent in the Na'vi that, you know, is going to be our baddie again.
I mean, he's listed as the you know, as the same character, but I don't know if that's just IMDb like guessing and like, you know,
maybe flashbacks, or
he's listed for all the sequels.
okay, what if there's like, you know, it's been a little while since we've had an Avatar movie, so maybe there's like a montage in the beginning to get everybody caught up.
I wonder.
In that.
No, I've got a feeling that there's going to be something that ends up with either him in an Avatar body of his own. Maybe not in a V1 though. Maybe he'll be in like a red body or something, like some sort of like villainous looking equivalent.
Maybe Awa also took him.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe or maybe there's like a villainous version of Eva, or not Eva, Iwa.
Awa?
Iwa.
Aya? Aya?
Enya. Hey, Enya's music goes well with Pandora. I can imagine listening to Enya as all these, you know, magic mountains and waterfalls are happening.
Probably would have suited better than Celine Dion, though I love Celine Dion. When her song started, though, I was like, oh yeah, Celine Dion.
Yeah. So, like, I think there is a lot of like smart. Even if the story is pretty simple and pretty old hat, and you know, I think some of the slower parts of the movie. But bizarrely, I think the weakest part of the movie is when Jake first meets Neytiri, like that like section up until a certain point, up until maybe we start getting like some proper growth and some montages of him like becoming an Na'vi. That's probably, I think, the slowest section of the film for me. And I think part of it is just because it is kind of going through the motions of that part of all these types of story, and it's probably the least, even though you get to see like some cool alien birds and stuff, it's probably the part that's the least unique to it. So because everything else in it feels like it's uniquely Avatar in the sense that, okay, you've got this idea of traveling into the other body, so that when that's used mechanically, or you get James Cameron in action, it's like, okay, this is when it feels like it's its own thing. When it's just doing that raw bit in the middle that is just the, you know, the Pocahontas dances with wolves part, that's the part when it does feel the dullest, I guess, you know, to use a word.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, obviously the ending, which is very long in this film, but it is very exciting. Is you know, is going to be more engaging. And the beginning, where you're just like, what is this place? What is this world? Is also going to be more engaging. And the middle stuff is like going through the beats. But I did remember when I was watching this today, I was thinking a lot of these parts, I'm reminded of what it felt like to watch in 3D, which is not as exciting now, watching it in 2D. You know, especially the learning to fly parts and exploring the world, or even when like Pandora lights up at night for the first time and stuff like that, and just, you know, watching it with the 3D tech, which was used very, very well in this movie, even for someone like you that doesn't like 3D. I'm sure you enjoyed watching it. It
was shot in 3D, and the funny thing is that most 3D movies that came out for the next few years that basically sullied everyone's opinion on it were all conversions from being shot in 2D, you know, barring the odd exception. But yeah, like I'm probably not even going to see the new one in 3D because I just don't care about 3D anymore. And
well, I mean, if James Cameron wants me to watch his movie in 3D, then I will. If that's how he thinks we should watch it.
Maybe.
I know the ticket I bought is 3D. I assume the IMAX one is going to be 3D also.
It probably will be. I mean, maybe I'll just say, maybe I'll get in the mood and be like, you know what, I'll make the exception and do this one in 3D because Cameron wants me to see it in 3D. But right now, I'm just like,
has he said like you? Because obviously, when the first one came out, he's like watching in 3D, right? But like, I mean, he invented this technology for you guys to enjoy watching 3D.
He spends so much time developing the tech and like promoting that I have to assume that he wants us to. But yeah.
So yeah, I think watching it today in 2D on my television was not quite as exciting as watching it in 3D, my first 3D movie experience.
Here's the thing though, I almost don't want to see it for the first time in 3D though, because I think if the movie's good and if it works, it doesn't need the 3D, and it should hold up without it. And I do think the movie does hold up without it.
Twice.
Maybe I should.
I'll watch it twice before we review.
You've already set that up though.
I might even watch it 3 times. If I can convince my friend to go with me on Thursday night. Although I have to like buy tickets now.
Yes. I you know, we're going through all the characters there, and we're setting up all these things. Obviously there's some other cool action elements. They've got And you know, I think there's a very obvious comparison to make with Aliens in that Cameron very much likes the idea of a mech suit, because obviously you had the power loader in Aliens, and he's returned to that here with actual military mech suits that are just an advanced version of that, effectively. You know, running around.
Yeah, I mean, I like that this planet is so alien that people can't breathe on it. Also, you have to have some sort of enclosure. So I think that's pretty cool. Plus, the Na'vi are like twice the size of humans.
Yeah.
So maybe they have to have something to even like feel like they might be a threat if they're the military, you know?
Yeah, and also the whole thing with the rebreathers is I do kind of like that it's not like instant death. Like, it's not like, you know, Total Recall where Arnold's eyes start popping out of his head instantly. It's more like, no, because there's one point that it's one of my favorite moments with Stephen Lang in the whole movie.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up.
Where he just, like, it's when they're making their escape and he notices it and he just kicks the door open and goes out and starts firing shots because he thinks he's a badass and just holds his breath for like 30 seconds to do it. And eventually, like, some grunt runs out and goes, "Sir, your breather," and he's like,
he still like takes his time.
Yeah,
right? He's still like,
yeah. It's honestly, all the action in the last third is fantastic. Like the Na'vi assault and all the jets and, like, planes, jets, helicopters. I don't even know what you call them because they're kind of mixtures of both, but they're
kind of like the Quinjet, I guess, huh?
Yeah, kind of Quinjet-esque.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're doing all these things. There's a great big moment when turns out the other main Na'vi we get to know, Sute, who's the one who's kind of betrothed to Neytiri to begin with, and doesn't like Jake very much.
He's Cocoam from Pocahontas.
Well, he's kind of the bully. I actually kind of looked at him as being he's kind of the Na'vi equivalent to Norm's character, in that Jake's showing up and kind of taking, like, his role that he's supposed to have, and he's not happy about it.
Yeah, until they, you know, the growth of, like, no, he is better at this, and okay.
Yeah, well, he kind of wins.
Respect.
He kind of wins both him and Norm over ultimately. But his big death moment where he, like, sort of, like, like, the music's going and he jumps onto the back of one of the planes and he starts just, like, swiping and stabbing at, like, the soldiers.
Yeah, it's a great slow-mo shot.
Yeah. But eventually he gets shot and, you know, falls off. And again, it's this idea of he's very good at being a warrior, but ultimately he can't stand up to against too many people with big machine guns. Eventually he's going to get mowed down, and that's the ultimate thing. But it's this great big moment. But once it becomes, you know, like, Iwa's heard Jake's, like, prayer for, like, help, because that's when he says to Iwa, he connects to it, and we'll talk about all the physical stuff in a bit, but he connects to it and he says, like, where I come from, there's no green left. Like, they ruined it, and they're going to try and do the same here. So please help. Like, this is, like, you know, we're fighting for you as much as we are, like, the Na'vi people. And sure enough, like, you know, Neytiri's almost about to get, like, you know, killed by, like, the troops. And all these big ram aliens that we saw earlier, they're like elephants with ram heads. I mean, I say ram heads, I don't mean like the head of a ram. I mean they have
more like a hammerhead shark, but a bone.
But when I say ram, I mean because it's made for ramming. That's what I'm getting at. They ram into things.
It's meant to clear forest.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they come right at them, and, you know, we get the birds and stuff all come in, and all that's great. But, like, what I really appreciated is when Jake, like, eventually jumps onto, like, some of the planes and throws in some grenades into the, like, the exhaust and things to make them blow up. He eventually, it all looks good, but when he eventually gets to the main one, which is the one that the Colonel's on, and the Colonel's, like, good enough at doing what he does that he, like, you know, he's able to throw, you know, he tilts the plane so that Jake slips, but one of the grenades actually gets into one of the vents anyways, and like, everything that happens in this sequence, which is then the Colonel running out to the mech suit and trying to, like, gear up and, like, having to close it just in time as the explosion happens and part of his face gets burned, and like, all of it, all the way down to the ground, which then the fight is, like, him in the mech suit taking on Neytiri, who's come in to rescue Jake, who's knocked out at this point. And, like, I mean, not even to mention that she's riding the scary monster from earlier on, who's now an ally because Iwa's connected all the animals together to, like, form Pandora Avengers to take on the military. But, like, she's pinned down and, like, he's going to stab her, and then Jake jumps in. Like, all of this action is so well directed, and all of it's paced expertly, where it has that great feeling of, like, obviously so much thought had to go into every step of this, but so much of it feels natural and off the cuff in the moment, you know, where it'll, you know, the explosion catches lying at an odd angle, or that when it's Jake just in the Na'vi form versus him in the mech suit, he picks up like the exploded weapon that he dropped to like use as a shield against his big knife, and then, you know, there's back and forth with that. All of it's so good. In fact, one of my favorite visuals of the entire film is right near the end. It's when Neytiri's holding Jake's human body. She actually rushing.
Me too.
Yeah.
I love that shot, and she still sees him. Like they actually have that line together,
Yeah,
you know. But
yeah.
just the scale of her holding him, this tiny human that she's in love with, and like having a shared moment. Like I love that. It's such a beautiful scene.
It's a great visual. It's just this idea that she's trying to wake him up, and she finally realizes that it's the human form that's in trouble, and she like rushes over and like gets the breather for him. And it's, I mean, even just like without the breathing issue, like this idea that he is this very vulnerable person because he's smaller, just because humans are smaller, but he's also got this extra, you know, his legs don't work.
And she's never seen him like this before.
No,
yeah.
And she's like truly protecting him, like he's truly in her arms, and like she had to save him. In fact, one of the things that I noticed in this viewing that I really liked is so the night they have quote unquote sex, right, where she takes him to this other beautiful site that's important to the people. This is the part of the bulldoze that kind of kickstarts the war, because Stephen Lang's decided he's going to do this intentionally. It's implied at least that he's done this intentionally to provoke them so that everything will kick off and he gets to have his war, right? But the night before they have sex, if you know the way Na'vi have sex in this forest, where they connect their tail lights together and they're sort of like together.
Sex.
Yeah, and it's all very, and there's a little joke early on where
I didn't mean to wear braids for this, by the way. It was just coincidence.
They have their Na'vi sex, and it's this beautiful, you know, all the lights are going off scene, and he obviously goes back to human form and he goes to sleep, right? That's kind of the schedule of it. I kind of like that as the bulldozer coming in, he's not waking up, because this is when he's like eating his eggs and stuff, and he's desperate to go back.
It's super tense.
Yeah, he's desperate to go back because he's excited to see Neytiri again. But she is like screaming, "Please, Jake, wake up, because the bulldozers are coming!" And he's like so vulnerable here. I love this idea that the night after they've gotten this close, where it's like, oh no, this is not just like she's teaching him because she's been tasked to teach the outsider. This has become a genuine connection where he wakes up when he becomes human again. He goes, "Oh, what are you doing, Jake? Like, you're getting too close. You're beginning to feel too many things, and you're losing your humanity to an extent." Of course, the moral of the story is that no, he's actually gaining humanity because he's being kind and he's being empathetic and so on and so on. But this idea that this reminder that he's not really one of them, because he won't wake up because he's what they call a dream walker. He only wakes up in this body when he's asleep in the other one. And that's why he's not waking up. It happens like the morning after they've just had this intimate moment, and as this happens, the bulldozer's coming in, and this is like this force is connected to him because this is other humans, you know. I thought that was a really neat thing, like for her character, is like she maybe is forgotten that he's also a human, and I think that's partly why it's so beautiful to me when she finally protects the human version of him. It's like not only is she in love with him, she's accepting of like the other part of him as well. It's not just like I'm forgetting who you really are to just be to love the illusion. I'm accepting that this is also part of you. And yeah, the movie ends with him becoming full on 100% Na'vi at the end, but this is a beautiful moment because it's like accepting of the other part of him, which has been this divide between them the whole movie, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's just such a great moment. It's so well shot, and just seeing the vulnerable side of him, not just as like, he can't breathe, but also, you know, his legs don't work, and she's like seeing this for the first time, and he's just he needs extra protection in his human form, and you know, at this point he's become like the like the Muad'Dib of this of this tribe, and like he, you know, he's riding the big dragon that no one else can ride except for like very, you know, handful of Na'vi in the past, and he's become this great warrior and hero, and like almost a I don't know, like a not biblical, but like a like religious figure, you know, because of all the things he's able to do. And here he is, she sees his human form, and he's just this small, weak person that is just so strong on the inside, you know. It's like the ableist not argument, but like it's an argument against ableism, you know, like everybody just has so much to offer, and you know, just because somebody can't do it physically, like they still have so much inside of them.
I think that's why that new scene at the start with him like picking the fight with the guy, even though it's a little cheesy and that it's really on the nose of like, some tough guy's like slapped his girlfriend and he's going to go over and, you know, be the protector. But the fact that I think what I like about it is because instead of talking to him, he just pulls the stool and just because he knows that he needs an advantage because he's in a wheelchair. So he's like, no, this is my tactic. I'm going to make him fall and just jump on him and start punching the shit out of him. I think that scene sets up what you're just talking about, which is he's willing to try and do anything regardless of his situation.
It's all about heart, you know?
Yeah.
I also, the scene, I think you went for like 15 minutes about it went through like 45 minutes of the movie, but like this scene where like the animals and stuff come to help, where it's not just human versus Na'vi anymore, it's humans versus Pandora. And that scene always, or not always, because I've only seen it twice, but like that scene also like made me start crying because I was just so happy. It reminds me of it's like the Rohirrim with Gandalf on the hill during, you know, the Two Towers during the Battle of Helm's Deep, which is a great, you know, battle in movie history. And I know you don't like those films, but like that moment that like, yeah, you know, just when everything feels hopeless, you know that you have more on your side. And in this case, it's like, it's the planet, you know, the planet is, don't forget about, you know, about the world that you're from. Like it's not just us, you know, we share this world, which is the message obviously in this movie that, you know, humans have lost because you know, Earth is very different now, versus like Pandora, which hasn't made all the mistakes yet, and they're just so connected to their planet and like literally everything around them they can connect to. So yeah, I love that moment.
No,
anyway,
it's good, yeah.
We can go back to it.
no, by all means, go back to anything. Because you know, I think it's a movie we want to go through beat by beat anyway, and
No,
we've already been talking for like 90 minutes, you know, without doing that. And I think it's because the plot's so simple that I think just going to specific moments or like threads throughout that you want to discuss just makes more sense to me. And I think the thread of the main romance is pretty strong, and mainly because I think when they use the mechanics, I really like stuff, which is why I also think the last hour it kind of kicks it up a notch. I think this mechanic of the humans are vulnerable, their human bodies are vulnerable when they're being a Na'vi is quite interesting, or this idea that they can be, you know, if they're pulled out, then that Na'vi body just drops, and that's something that's, you know, once we get into that last sort of third of the movie, it happens a few times, and it's like a constant. It's like, okay, you've set up this mechanic, and I love mechanics in like sci-fi and like in supernatural stuff, because when there's rules to it that are easy to understand like that, there's this jeopardy. There's that moment in the fight when he's staring down Jake, and Jake's kind of holding his own, where Stephen Lang just kind of turns around and starts going for his body in the trailer, because he's like, yeah, if I just grab you,
all he has to do really is break the window, because now the atmosphere is coming in, and what is his body going to do? He can't do anything.
Yeah, and that's why you sort of see like the body of Jake start to like sort of struggle to breathe, and then like you know, Avatar Jake starts to like stumble, because it's like, oh, he's kind of been pulled back kind of like gradually, you know, rather than like a clean disconnection like normally happens. It's more like a sort of gradual, because it's sort of falling apart. He's
got to like save both versions of himself, because Stephen Lang has him by the throat and he's going to stab him. He's going to stab his, you know, Avatar Jake, but then like regular Jake's going to die of suffocation beforehand. So yeah, it's this huge like threatening moment to both.
And I do think it's important thematically that Neytiri's the one that gets to kill him.
I love that scene too, yeah.
Because ultimately it's true. Like, this isn't Jake's people truly yet. This is her fight to win, and you know, like, her people's fight to win. So I think it actually is really nice that it is one of the Na'vi that do get to beat the villain at the end
with an arrow, not with like technology, not with a gun, not with a giant mech suit, just an arrow.
Yeah. Although mech suits are cool, so I'm okay with them still using them to some extent next movie.
Well, yeah, it's
For
just
fun.
The technology versus you know what they have.
Which, and that's the other thing. Going back to he has heart and he's willing to keep doing things, and there is like a slight negative part to that. And I'm speaking here from experience, actually. Growing up in a house with a dad who had MS and was in a wheelchair, is that sometimes people who are in wheelchairs are something similar, but this is my experience specifically, and it's obviously similar to Jake because again he's in a wheelchair. Is this idea of I don't need help, I can do it myself, almost to like sometimes an overly stubborn, and not everyone's like this obviously, but I think it is relatively common to find in people who are in that situation. They're determined to prove they don't need help because they don't want to feel pity, they don't want to feel the sympathy. And you see that I think in Jake in this movie early on, where someone offers help getting into the pod and he's like, no, I can do it myself. And I think the other part of this ending where like Neytiri comes and has to save him is like he's accepting of the being saved. He doesn't like feel in any way like he's been pitied here. It feels like no, he needed saved, he needed help, like there was no way he could do this on his own, and he's accepting of that help. And I think that's the other thing about the Na'vi is that they're then the Iwa like that connects all the life on the planet is that it's all about connecting into the system and all being helping each other, right? It's not being about this solo lonesome. And I think if anything like that could improve the film a little bit is the idea that he does build this ragtag crew almost. Like he's got Michelle Rodriguez, he's got Norm, he's got Sigourney Weaver, he's got the other scientist dude who's kind of there. Like all of them coming together to help, and then even the Na'vi that end up helping him that initially didn't like him very much. Like maybe he could drive that theme home a bit more, that he does build a family in both sides of this, like both the human side and the Na'vi side. He builds like comrades that are there for him, and I think that's also kind of a critique of the military because right at the start he's like, oh yeah, like you never, like maybe you technically aren't a Marine anymore, but you never stop, you never forget the discipline, you never forget the attitude. And the whole idea of military is that it's pumped into you, right, that you are part of this team, you're part of the military, you're part of your squad, you're fighting for the country and all this together.
Yeah. If Stephen Lang was in my like military troop, I would have been like rah rah, let's go also. Like yeah.
But I think the idea is that he felt abandoned by all, even though he gets a taste of it again when he's been offered all these things by Stephen Lang, and he almost like he jumps at the chance to work for him because he's like, hell yes sir, because he almost feels useful again. I think that's why it's appealing to him, it's tempting to him again. He feels a part of that again, like he can offer something. And I think the critique of that sort of like almost the facade of that in the military in the movie is that the real connections he makes with both the humans and the Na'vi when they actually have a cause to fight for that's real, that's not just one that he's been told to have a cause for, he's not just doing it for money, is the one that's real. It's the one that he actually connects with. So there are layers to this movie that do exist. I don't think it's as deep, and it's definitely not as good as The Terminator or 2 or Aliens or even The Abyss, I would argue. But
it's been a long time since I've seen The Abyss. I have seen it more than I've seen Avatar though.
But it was to say that I don't think it's Cameron's best movie. I do think that there are things you can critique in it, but I think there's a lot of good elements in it, and I think there's a lot of them there that work together well enough that I think the main reason why it works is simply the spectacle and how well it's directed, but I think there are layers there that give it a bit more than that.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially as like, I know obviously James Cameron is a huge environmentalist, especially since like post Titanic when he was getting really into his underwater stuff, and that the environmental message in this movie is pretty hard to ignore as well. Like everybody is literally connected to their planet and to everything that lives there. I love when like Jake is facing off versus this giant like cat like creature that wants to kill him, and so he has to like fight against it, and it's Neytiri that has to kill it to protect Jake. And she's like, it didn't have to die. It shouldn't have had to die. But like, you don't know what you're doing. You're the reason it's dead, and I'm angry at you for it.
Yeah, actually, slightly, because I think you're mixing up the two monsters here. Because the cat-like monster is the one that he jumps off the waterfall from, and then that's the one that Neytiri rides later on. That's the one that comes back and offers.
I thought that was the same thing.
No. The one that he kills or she kills to save him.
Oh, they're more like
smaller,
like hyena, like.
Yeah. They're more like.
That's the one he escapes from, and then
it comes back later because it comes back
at night.
And you think, oh, it's going to attack Neytiri, but then it sort of leans down to be like, hey, hop on, like we're in this, we're allies now.
It was good.
Very toothless, actually. I got a little from Tree of Dragon.
I was thinking of How to Train Your Dragon just from the flying scenes, because those are
that's true. That's true. They are very dragon-like. And that you mentioned, you sort of like brushed past this earlier, but the way he wins them back, because they don't trust them after the home tree thing, is he decides to go after the big dragon that no one can ride except like I think they said it's only happened 5 times since their recorded history that like someone's been able to like tame one of these big flying things, and he does that to prove no, we can do this, and that ties back into he's willing to try even if something seems impossible, right? He's willing to leap even though he physically can't, and that's kind of what makes you in theory root for him, so. There's a lot of thought in this script. There absolutely is. I think in some ways it gets pared down and is simplified enough that I understand why people don't see it as much. But I do think it is there, and I do think that all of these things are probably going to be expanded upon in the sequel. And part of why I'm kind of really pumped for the sequel is that now that we've got all the introduction out of the way, it's like, well, okay, what are we doing now? Like what if he's got a saga of like 4 more movies planned? Like what is this next movie? Like, what are we doing?
I am so excited. I mean, there is a chance that I'll be disappointed for some reason, but I don't think so. Like, honestly, I'm really excited to see what his next story is in this. I mean, especially after just watching this one, I'm like, yeah, I love Pandora. I'm ready to go back.
So some people who obviously don't like this movie and are quite jaded with it, obviously won't think this is much of a statement, but I do generally go into this next one thinking it's going to be better. Not because I think this one's bad. I think, like I say, it's not my favorite Cameron movie by any means. But
it has to be original.
Yeah, but like, just because he set the world up now, that my gut instinct is just like, okay, now he just gets to tell a better story in it. Now he gets to...
If he's got like 15 hours worth of scripts, like he's got to have something good, right?
Yeah, you would think. And... I don't know.
It's James Cameron, like he knows how to write movies.
I don't know what level of like expectation I have, or like at what point I am disappointed but still think it's good, or it meets my expectations, or it exceeds them, or whatever. But my gut does kind of go back to like my Terrifier comparison of like, okay, you've set it up now go nuts with it, and that's where I'm at with it.
I guess so.
So I am very excited and optimistic about Avatar: Way of the Water. I really am. I think this first one is a really solid movie that gets the spectacle right. It's very well directed. The visuals, by and large, hold up really well. There's the odd animation that maybe doesn't quite hold up, and like a CG face in the Navi or whatever. But by and large, like things look very expensive and they feel high quality all this time later, and that is worth something.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. I have no complaints about the visuals of the film. Like I didn't even really notice any like bad CG faces while watching it. But
oh, by the way, Sute, the other Navi that dies, that was going to who didn't like Sully at first. He's played by the guy who plays MM on The Boys, which I did not know until I checked who it was, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
That is cool.
So it's just one of those things. Yeah, it's the same as CCH Pounder. I didn't know it was her until I checked today. I was like, oh, and then I heard the voice and went, oh yeah, I can hear her voice now.
Who plays her dad? Because it was a voice that was familiar. He sounded like Chief Powhatan from Pocahontas, also.
Wes Studio. I don't know where he's from.
I think that it is him, actually.
He was in Last of the Mohicans, which doesn't surprise me.
I know exactly who he is. Yeah,
he was in Deep Rising. We just did that.
I don't remember him in Deep Rising.
He was
known for it.
He was the head of the villains.
Oh, that was him. Oh. Yeah, he's like the main villain in Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, okay.
But he was much younger then, so I guess that's why I didn't recognize him. I just want to see if he's in Pocahontas. No, it's not him in Pocahontas.
Yeah. So, as far as, obviously there's a lot of small characters as well that you just kind of recognize from the military side of the movie. And I think it's notable their reactions when they see Jake at the start is very much like he shouldn't be here.
He's also in Dances with Wolves. I just want to throw that out there. Since that's the movie everything gets compared to.
Oh, okay. I've never seen Dances with Wolves. I just know it's compared to it a lot. But yeah. So.
One of the reasons I'm really looking forward to it is to the sequel is kind of selfish, for me. And maybe will turn some people off, but like I love that Cameron is an environmentalist and he made, this beautiful world where it's like respect your Mother Earth, because she has a lot to offer and we share this planet. But now also James Cameron's a vegan, so I feel like there's going to be a vegan message in the new one. Now, if it's not there, I'm not going to say I'm disappointed. I'm kind of expecting it, because that is a huge part of like environmental impact.
Yeah, well,
this one seems to be more about water, obviously, but
I mean, the thing is, though, is like it's kind of addressed in this movie where there's hunting and killing going on, but it's very much respect what you kill. We kill it for a purpose. Yeah.
Like that is not a thing I enjoyed watching, though.
The TV's whole thing about, like, this is not a good kill because, it didn't have to die, but, it's your stupidity that got us here. Whereas, when it's a good kill, it's like, okay, no, we're killing this for food, that's its purpose, and we respect that it's offered us this, and it's all part of the life cycle.
Yeah. The noble savage, like, we say a prayer thing to make this okay, is not like a thing a trope that I enjoy watching on screen still. Yeah, that's a complaint I still have.
Yeah, but that is based on real things, though, right? Like, that's real cultures that have done that in the past.
Maybe, I don't know. It might also just be sort of like like the white man's version of certain cultures. Like, I don't know.
Okay,
well, like, there are like halal, and I think in like the Middle East and stuff, where they slaughter animals and say a prayer while they do it. So that's still a current practice.
Yeah,
but it's very brutal.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that this movie's already established like the Navi's like outlook on this. I don't think it's going to suddenly change in the next movie.
It might, because I mean, the writer and director has changed his views. So, and there it looks like they're going to a different like tribe in this one also. I
don't think it's going to factor in. But I mean, maybe there'll be a vegan message of some kind. But I don't.
Maybe. I'm telling you, I know it was selfish, and I know it's going to turn people off, but like, I am excited for it.
Because I don't think anything of when something's set in the past and it's a time where people had to hunt it for food. I don't think, those bastards, like, they should be vegan. Like, it makes sense.
No, of course not. Yeah.
And the Navi in this world, like, they don't necessarily have industrial farming, so like, I get it. It's fine. Like, I don't think. I think likewise. I don't think Cameron, unless that's one of the things that the humans have taught them how to do, is like farm in that level that they don't have to do it anymore. I don't think it'll necessarily even like mention it. I don't think I'll go down that path. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe he'll care so much about it.
I mean, it's called the Way of Water. One of the biggest. I mean, the thing that the beings that we kill the most of every year for food is fish, and we are overfishing our oceans for food. So that might be a message. Yeah, it might be the fish are friends, not food message.
It may very. I mean, that's more lately. I think. I think the commentary of like overfishing and maybe stuff like oil spills and like I could see that all slipping into this movie easily. Yeah. Like I think that is far more likely to be a big factor in this Way of the Water thematically than specifically the vegan side. But like,
you're right. I mean, a lot of people aren't ready for the message, so he might leave it out just for political reasons. But I don't know. I'm feeling maybe. I'm thinking maybe by 5. When 5 comes out, he'll just straight out say it.
I don't think it's not because he doesn't want to promote the message. I think it's just because it doesn't fit necessarily in the world that he's already set up, is all I'm saying. Maybe other tribes are vegan already. Maybe we'll meet another tribe and they'll have their own thoughts and ideas. I don't know. From the trailer, it seems like they're going to like a tribe that stays mostly around the water. Yeah, that makes sense. So no, I am excited about all these. But just on this original film a little bit, just to wrap it up and rate it. We didn't mention Sigourney Weaver too much. Obviously, she's a very capable hand. She's very strong screen presence whenever she's on. So like obviously not saddened to see her there. If anything, I'm always excited when some directors have the regulars that they bring back. Like honestly, like if he was a luck charm for him. If he was alive, I have no doubt Paxton would have like popped up at some point. Like I have no doubt. He was alive in 2009, wasn't he? Well, yeah, 2009, but like he wasn't going to put all of his regulars in the first one. He picked Sigourney. Michael Bihn's still around. Sure, so is Lance Henriksen. We've got options. We've got options.
I definitely thought Lance Anderson was dead like 10 years ago.
He does look pretty old, but he's a very he's still making. He's in like 50 direct-to-video movies a year. That man is churning through jobs. But you know, I would not be surprised. It's just so funny though that it's been like 13 years by the time this comes out since the first one. That like Zoe Saldana was like new when Avatar came out. Because it was a star now, it was the same year as Star Trek, and that was kind of her introduction. And now it's like, oh, she's been around for ages now. Like she's, you know, she's an actress who's like touching 40 probably at this point.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just kind of funny how much time has passed, and like this is where we are. But
I imagine. I mean, it looks like they have children in this one from the trailer.
It looks like
they're also teenagers. I don't know how the Na'vi age. Like maybe they're teenagers or like age 5. I don't know.
yeah. Like we don't know what the scale of time is like for their growth, but yeah, it does seem like the real amount of time might have passed between movies. Mm-hmm. You know, or something close to it anyway.
I wonder if they'll get into like if Jake's body, since his body was, you know, designed, it was like cloned in a scientific experiment to age quickly so that he can be an adult by the time. I think it takes 5 years for the ship to get there, right? And he mentions like, oh, they got bigger because they were just babies before. So I wonder if he ages differently. Like maybe he ages faster than the rest of them.
So I was just to clarify what you meant there. The Na'vi bodies that they were had in a test tube had grown on the trip to Pandora.
Yeah, to like a full size adult. So,
but maybe they speed it up though because they need to grow them.
Yeah, but then does it keep accelerating? Like were the bodies always meant to only last like 10, 15 years and then expire?
That feels like a plot for like Avatar 5 rather than 2. like for him to realize that he's got a limited time.
An expiration date because of this? Yeah,
like a replicant,
not a naturally born one.
Like a replicant. There's like an end. I don't know, maybe, but that feels like something. Maybe they'll hint at it, but that feels like something for like, you know, a later, like near the end sequel. Unless they're going to pass the torch to like, his son or something, and like he'll leave. But I would suspect that although because he is this weird hybrid and he's not necessarily a natural Na'vi body, that maybe it has some special qualities and maybe he can do something that the rest of the Na'vi can't do. For example, maybe like his Na'vi body can like breathe oxygen in a way that, like, you know, because you know how like they need like the mask to like breathe properly in Pandora atmosphere. Maybe if there's a human ship that comes, because it looks like there's going to be more human like of some kind in the sequel. I wonder if they come back as some sort of retaliation or something, because it takes, you know, like you said, it takes 5 years to make the trip. So by the time they go back and they find out what's happened on Pandora, it's like, okay, gear up, everyone, we're going back to fight. You know, another 5 years back.
Just leave this resource there, yeah.
So that means that it would be 10 years before like the reinforcements like come back effectively, you know. So it could be a 10-year jump.
Could be right, yeah.
So I wonder if like so the reason why I'm saying all this is that I'm wondering if there's like maybe an element where he goes onto like an Earth ship into the Earth atmosphere on the ship, but he can breathe it because his body's actually partly human still because it was like made with human DNA too. So I wonder if they'll maybe play with that he has some like weird advantages by being different to the rest of them, or maybe they're kids. What if Neytiri and Jake's kids are?
They're like mutant babies.
Yeah, they're kind of different. They've got special qualities because they come from 2 worlds, and that could be part of the message is that like us all connecting is the best thing for, you know, the diversity is what leads the world forward.
I wish we knew more about like the rest of Pandora's animals that work, like because they all have the little hair squiggly things that connect to.
That's true, yeah.
But we don't really see them connect to other things, you know, except for the Na'vi. The Na'vi are the only ones that connect to anything. But like, it would be interesting if these glowy trees were all around and like animals connected to it too, just instinctively, like that's where they sleep or something, or every now and then they have to migrate to an area that's got a lot of them.
Maybe they do, we just don't see it in the movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'd like to see more of that because we didn't get any of that.
It is interesting though when you think about it though, that they use the same thing they use for sex, but they also connect it to animals to bond with them for like your horse riding or flying or whatever. It is kind of, like, imagine an Earth where us and all mammals had like a port that synced up. That's because that's effectively what they have. They all have this same connection that connects with every species.
Obviously, we would be very empathetic towards our planet and our other animals that we share with.
I mean, there's some people who try to make things fit with species.
We don't have to go into that.
I'm just saying, pandemics happen because something nefarious starts somewhere.
If this port's always been around, then I don't think that would be an issue. That would have happened a long time ago.
That's true. That's true.
Died out. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. But that is, I suppose, the interesting difference. Other than just things looking different and being colorful and different shapes and whatnot, is that every species on the planet seemingly has this compatible port.
Well, I mean, they would still have to have some form of genitalia other than the hair, though, right? Like the hair connects the minds, but it doesn't connect like the body. I
assume that there's still genitalia of some, even though you don't really see it. Maybe it pops out, maybe it hides and it comes out when it's ready to go. But I kind of took the sex experience as being like, so we've been doing Babylon 5. Like, the other way that the telepaths also links, psychically when they're having sex, and it's more intense because they can feel what each other is feeling. I'm thinking it's kind of like that, where it's like you've got the physical part of it, but then like this connection between them through the hair, or it's not even the hair, it's the tails, right? Like, is it the hair?
Well, it's like something that comes out of the neck, or like the base where the here, right? That's
okay.
And it looks like hair because they braid it in with the hair around it, but then the women also have longer hair that's just hair.
Yes. I think I just I kept swapping in my head if I thought it was the tail or the braid, but yeah, regardless, the point I'm making though is that there's the physical side of it, but then there's the sort of telepathic almost connection between their squigglies hooking up.
The squiggly bits.
Squiggly bits. So I think there's a lot of, like, it's funny, we're hitting 2 hours here in this conversation, and some of it's been talking about the sequel, admittedly, but there is a lot of interesting little bits of like world building and mythology, even though it doesn't seem that deep from like a, because normally when we talk about world building, we talk about political parties, we talk about how the structure of the world is. Here, because they do seem like kind of like classic, like sort of tribes, and yeah, it's hinted at that there's other tribes, and that's how they get like a big army at the end as they go around, and like, because it's just this one of the world tree that's the main tribe that we look at for the whole movie, whose name I'm forgetting because it's an alien word that I can't remember. But they then go around to other tribes to like build their army for the big third act fight. And seemingly in the second movie, we're going to get like the group of people who live out by the water and like all that sort of stuff. So I'm excited, and we'll get another. I love how it's kind of like so they connect with their horse type animal to ride, and then they connect with like a flying creature to fly. And I'm like, oh, so that's like he's like, I was thinking of Batman oddly here because it's like bat pod, bat plane, and then in the sequel they're going to have the bat boat because they're going to connect to the whale. Yeah, they're going to connect to the a fish type creature. So it's funny, and because they said that they can connect to any of the horsey creatures, but the birds, like once someone's connected to one of those creatures, that creature will only ever fly with that person, that Navi. I think that's quite interesting as a there's like a bond.
There's a bond. Yeah.
Which again is kind of like How to Train Your Dragon when I think of
or like like birds will have imprinting, so maybe it's sort of taken from that. Or they can imprint on on someone. It doesn't even have to be another bird,
I'm getting Twilight flashbacks from the word imprinting.
Yeah, I heard rumor about that. I haven't actually watched the movies where that's a thing.
A lot of problematic questions arise.
Are dogs known for imprinting? I thought it was just a bird thing.
I don't know, but there's imprinting, and and I don't know what it says when you're imprinting on someone who's like, underage. I was going to say underage, but yes, is a newly born baby. It's a lot of wild things going on here. It is, like, I think the movie has its cheesier moments. There's some lines of dialogue that are a bit on the nose. There's a few characters that are a bit thin, and I think Sam Worthington as an actor, as a leading man, is just fine. I don't think he's particularly good, but I don't think he's bad either. I think he's just kind of, obviously he's helped a lot by having a good director direct him. Like that obviously is like, I think if you look at Sam Worthington in something like Clash of the Titans, you're like, oh god, like you can see how much Cameron like helps like, not a bad actor, but like a mediocre actor, right?
I don't hate that movie.
Your credibility.
I don't hate that movie.
Your credibility's in the toilet.
Movie and I went, this was a pretty good movie. And then all of a sudden I realized everybody hates it. And I went, I don't know. And then I saw the sequel and I kind of felt the same way. Like, I kind of like the sequel too.
I'm just glad it's not sci-fi, so we don't have to do it.
I feel that way about Waterworld also. I mean, Waterworld's a great movie.
Waterworld's shit, but it's a more interesting bad movie. So there's something to talk about with that at least.
Waterworld's good.
Which is good because we have to do it at some point because it's a sci-fi movie. But
also, this is Taylor Kitsch, I think, but I also kind of like John Carter of Mars. I remember thinking, like, because it was such a bomb and like reviews were bad, and then I finally like rented it and watched it and went, oh, why do people hate it? Like, it's fine.
I don't remember a single thing about it. I felt nothing watching that movie. That's all I can tell you. I can't tell you any of the plot. I can just tell you I felt nothing whilst watching it.
Well, I don't know. I like what I like.
You have ruined so much of your credibility on this review. I'm just going to say it.
Maybe I represent a lot of people. A lot of people are just like, sometimes people are just too hard on movies.
Tara, for the audio people, Tara is holding up a copy of Johnny Mnemonic on Blu-ray that she purchased. So just context.
Black and white version. I haven't watched it yet though. It didn't work.
We're getting away from the subject here, which is we're going to rate Avatar out of 10. So you're up.
I love Avatar. I'm so glad that this was the next movie on the list, regardless of whether or not there was a sequel, because it was about time I revisited it and reassured myself that I was right to defend Avatar this past 13 years, because I think it's fantastic. I think creating a new world is hard, and like this is so well thought out. Obviously the characters are great, and the all the different layers that we went through. I mean, this was a pretty decent discussion, and it's so rich, right? It's just such a rich world that he's created with his team, and so satisfying as like a sci-fi fan and like an environmentalist. And I'm proud to be an Avatar defender, and I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay. I like Avatar a lot. I liked it a lot at the time. I still like it a lot now. It's not perfect. I don't think all the characters are as developed as they should be, and Sam Martin's just an okay lead actor. But all the positives that I've given, the sense of spectacle and the big moments, more than make it a very fulfilling ride. And like you said, we have sat here and talked about it for quite a while. Some of that conversation was a little silly, but a lot of it was actually proper, analysis of some of the things that the film is doing and how it's setting up its characters and paying off its themes and all that. So I will give it a healthy 8.5 out of 10.
Ooh, I noticed your rating's gone down.
It's a smidge.
Is it because I gave it a 9 and you have to be lower than me?
I decided on my number before we started the review. Get over yourself.
I know how you are. That's all.
I think you'll find that I look back in my youth and think that I basically think I overrated everything, barring a few things, up until I was about 20.
Well, when you watch something, recency bias is a real thing.
Absolutely.
Like even this year, I'll go back and be like, that's more of this now that I had some time to think about it.
Recency bias, and I think at the time I was so excited for a new Cameron movie that I think there was a special magic in the air around it.
If I gave this movie a 10, would you have given it a 9?
No, 8.5.
Because that's like 1 point lower than me.
No. It'd still been an 8.5. That's why I decided.
I'm skeptic.
You can't shut up. You can't say that.
Yes, I can.
You can't just say, no, I don't believe you. You were never going to give it this. No, it's an 8.5 to me. It is Cameron's like 5th best movie, which which is fine.
I think honestly, I probably like this one a bit more than Terminator 2.
That's bold.
It's just more
bold.
I think.
Sure. Yeah, that's bold.
Because that's more of like a father-son movie, even though there is a literal relationship with the mother. But I don't know. But Maybe it's also a recency bias thing, but like I just love Pandora. I wish I can go there, but I can't because the only Pandora that exists is inside of a zoo, so I will never go.
All right.
There's one in Animal Kingdom in Florida. You can go to Pandora.
Yeah, well, I like Aliens all-timer, Terminator all-timer, Terminator 2, fantastic. Abyss, fantastic. I wish I could watch it again. Come on, Cameron, where's my cut? Or my new remaster. True Lies. I would probably put Avatar... it's been a while since I watched it. I'd probably put Avatar above True Lies. If I watch True Lies again, I might find the nostalgia and the fun factor of it might just sort of go over. But
Stephen Lang is pretty up there, but it might be my favorite villain. He's so funny.
If hearing Bill Paxton yell that he's got a tiny dick though, like that's that. There's so many good moments in True Lies. So
might be his best performance.
Yeah, but I think both of them I like more than Titanic. Titanic's my least favorite. I say that though, having not seen Piranha 2. Just put that, keep that in mind.
I've never seen it either, but it's a Cameron sequel, so it must be great, right?
I don't think it's really. Cameron directed. I don't think it's really a Cameron movie, though. If that makes sense.
Rambo 2, James Cameron, not directed, but he wrote it.
He just wrote it, and it's easily much worse than everything he directed.
Yeah, he definitely wrote it and was like, "I don't care about this. Let's just make it an action movie." Rambo is a very different character now.
Yeah, I think Rambo First Blood Part 2 is a fun enough movie, but it is nothing compared to First Blood, and it's very clear why
First Blood is so good.
It's very clear why he picked Aliens to direct over the second Rambo, right? He picked the right one.
I know it's a tangent, but like I refused to watch the Rambo movies because I thought they were so cheesy and stupid based on like the covers and stuff. And when I watched First Blood, I was just like, oh, this is like a drama. Like, this is a really good movie. I was so shocked and resistant to the Rambo films for so long when I finally watched First Blood.
On that subject, there's obviously some Vietnam comparisons and Avatar. Yeah, totally. I don't think we mentioned that too much.
I mean, how can you not, like, with all the I don't know, like, just like you can compare it to Apocalypse Now, like with all the napalm scenes, when they're taking out the trees, just the environment, whatever, just wipe it clean. We're at war now.
Yeah, so there you go. That's Avatar. That's what turned out to be an epic length review of the film and thoughts on the sequel and whatnot. So yes, by all means, complain in the comments about how much you don't like Avatar, because I expect that's what we're going to find. But still like, subscribe, and ding the bell and all that stuff, because it helps us out a lot if you do that. And also, you can hit the super thanks button or go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as, well, anything really. But you get goodies starting at $3 per month, including bonus episodes. And a monthly show called Meltdown, which has us just talking about different movies we've watched over the month, and we do a sci-fi quiz with each other. Fun times. So yeah, go and see if you're interested, and all of that. So yeah, I guess just to sum all this up, James Cameron rules and Zack Snyder is a hack. I'll end on that.
Zack Snyder drools.
I wasn't trying to say that. I was I had my own cadence that I wanted to deliver, and I feel like I nailed it. Avatar is better than anything Zack Snyder has ever touched. The end. It's so weird to me. There's people out there who defend like Batman v Superman and shit on Avatar, and I just don't get it. I can't fathom it. Anyway. Yeah. This has been our podcast talking about Avatar. Look out in 2 weeks for the review of Avatar: Way of the Water, which I suspect will be a meaty discussion about the everything in the film. So thank you very much.
Something next time, or
yeah, of course we do.
Okay. It's a movie, a sci-fi movie, or
it's a sci-fi podcast. Of course, it's a sci-fi movie.
What are we doing next time?
We're doing Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Woo!
We're finally going back. We did the original 5, we did the remake, so we're finally making a start on the modern trilogy. So
booyah.
Yes. It's basically Tara's Christmas present.
Thank you.
She begged to go back to the apes, and I'm like, fine, we'll do Rise of the Planet of the Apes in between the Avatars.
It's what I asked Santa for.
Anywho, that is the show. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Science Fiction and Computer at Salsa.